All right, residents of Jos and its environs were just starting to put the past behind them when it came calling again. Violence and killings returned to that land.
Well, the Plateau state capital, Jos and its environs became a place where renewed violence and killings held sway. Despite the presence of security officials, the killings continue unabated. The big question is what can be done to end this cycle of violence. And joining us now is the Plateau State Commissioner for Information, Yakubu Dati. Good morning and thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Some would say that it's too many crises in a year for Plateau State. In June, your principal had to abruptly leave his party national convention to attend to the killings back at home, where the figures are daunting. I mean, the amazing number of people that died. Just recently, I think last month, it was an attack on Unijos. And just a few days ago, the fallout of the Plateau State local government election. As a matter of fact, the PDP is saying that the results were announced while coalition was on. Let's begin with that.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. First and foremost, the upsurge of this crisis appears to be as the political activities are picking up. Right on resumption of office, Right Honorable Simon Bakula, along the governor of Plateau State, took strategic steps to restore peace and normalcy. And for the first time over a 16-year period, we had a period of peace for 3.5 years until just recently. And what are the steps taken? First, he created the Peace Building Agency, which is the only one of its type in the whole of West Africa, empowering them to go into dialogue and to bring people on the table. Just recently also, there was the passing into law of the criminal justice system, which empowers the courts to try offenders in Jos. Until now, most of the offenders were usually taken to Abuja because we didn't have necessary legislation. And that in itself creates a feeling of injustice because at the end of the day, the suspects will go and nobody hears anything about it. But with this new law...
How far is the prosecution going now, especially as it relates to the June attack?
Yes, it's on because the law was just initiated by the Governor Simon Lalo, who himself was the former speaker of Plateau State, and eventually it was signed just last week. So it's coming into force will now ensure the prosecution of those criminal elements or suspects that are caught. So those are two strategic steps that will cushion the effect of these crises that are ongoing. And thirdly is also the political angle, where politicians take advantage of the situation to try to work on our fault lines, which in Plateau has to do with ethnic and religious fault lines. For a state that has about 54 ethnic nationalities, it means it's a mini Nigeria, and that is why people are hailing the steps taken by Governor Lalong to ensure the restore of peace and normalcy.
Would you say it's actually apt to link the crisis in Plateau State generally now to the political atmosphere that is gradually growing?
Because that's what the government's saying.
There are so many attacks there, and of course, if you know the dynamics of Jos, of Plateau State, you know how that place is, and that was why for years in the past, that state came under so many attacks from different people. And there are some that said that there was an initial attack anyway that led to the killings there of some Fulani, allegedly the killing of some Fulani persons in Jos.
Well, the fact remains that we've had such attacks over spanning more than 16 years. But with the coming of this government under Simon Lalong, who has expressed, who understands the state, having been speaker for 8 years before coming in to be the governor of Plateau State, he was able to bring all the warring factions and use dialogue as a way of bringing the people together. And that is why we had 3.5 years of peace, of uninterrupted peace for the first time in Plateau State. And the people are speaking, the people affected are being brought on the table in a scientific manner. We've also attracted the attention of the international community, who have also come to look at the model we have adopted in the state. And when this added to that is also the growing economy. For the first time, the Plateau State economy gets an injection of 2.5 billion naira monthly to trigger local economy.
So what do we make
and
of
that in itself creates employment.
Yeah. So what do we make of the accusation that in one of the attacks that the attackers were there killing people for about 7 hours, and there was no security operative on ground to even stop any act there? I can't remember the particular village now.
Yes,
and coupled with what Amnesty International said about the government condoning the killers in a way somehow. So would you really generally say that it's just politics that is making this brew?
Sorry, what we see is the upsurge. Well, meaning that the upsurge at this time, as the elections approach, there seems to be a correlation. Secondly, we also have a military who we are also supporting to ensure that they get the job done. And because of the terrain, challenging terrain, they've also had to bring in bikes to be able to penetrate some of these areas so that their response time will be shorter. So we are working and supporting the military and other security agencies who have the constitutional power to be able to play that role to carry out their functions effectively. And that has yielded a lot of response. But we believe that when it comes to peace, the people have to agree to live in peace. It's not about bullets, it's not about guns, it's about the people. And that is why the Plateau Peace Agency is playing a very critical role.
Whether or not these government efforts are working is a subject of controversy. For instance, Augustine Agundu is a major general, commander of the unit in your state. I'm quoting him now. What I want to say categorically is that the situation in Plateau is becoming more precarious than expected. Since the unfortunate incident in June this year, with all the effort being made to bring understanding, the situation is getting out of hand. Sometime in June, you requested 10 billion naira from the victims' support fund, and you're of the opinion that this is going to support and compensate the victims and also prevent reprisal attack. How far has that gone?
Well, to start with, it's part of the strategies Governor Lalong has taken, because some of the areas that are affected need rehabilitation and resettlement, and he was able to convince President Buhari for Plateau to be part of the victim support group. Secondly, also is the creation of a mobile barracks within the area where we call the red zones, so that instead of them having to move to the area, they are resident there, so the response period will be shorter. And all that has been approved by the federal government.
Have you gotten the money?
No, we've not gotten the money yet, and we are working on that. But it's a process that starts with approval, which we have received. So the money and the barracks will soon come into place, because we are not just looking at short-term solutions, we are looking at long-term solutions. And we are working with those facility structures being informed and also mobilizing the people to be the key drivers of the peace process.
But before then, what happens? Because before you put the barracks in place, before you put every other thing in place, before you rehabilitate the people and then you construct the other new buildings for them to call homes, what happens before all those ones? Because these killings are still happening.
Yeah.
So, and of course we understand that a governor doesn't have control over security, so it still depends on the security at the center. So what happens? What
is happening is we are driving the issue of dialogue. We are looking at the issue of making our people see the difference between criminals and tribesmen, or this is my brother, or this is my religion, because we have a lot of mix where when people perpetrate crimes, they try to project it as if there's a particular ethnic group or a particular religion or a particular political party. So we try to create an environment for people to understand that criminals exist in every tribe, in every society. So you should not move away from saying, this is my criminal, because it either shares the same tribe or religion with you. So that comes with a lot of dialogue. And we are happy that just last week, even General Augustine Agundu, the SCF commander, had an interaction with the youth leaders in the state cut across. And I was there, where he also made the need for them to be the leaders, the drivers of the peace process. Just yesterday, day before yesterday, Bishop Kaigama, the Archbishop of Jos, was in dialogue with also the Bongon Jos and other religious leaders to also deepen the issue of dialogue, because the people themselves must be the drivers of the dialogue. Because eventually, when peace is returned as it is, you will need the security agencies will go back to the barracks.
Absolutely.
It's the people that will be there to drive the process. And we are beginning to see that even the payment, a regular payment of salaries, is helping to reduce the stressors, because we're pumping in about 2.5 billion naira every month as salary. And for a state that has a lot of civil servants, that goes to take care of school fees, it goes to take care of people having to go to the hospital bills, and all other stressors that add to the
dialogue
issues.
is great if it's done with sincerity of purpose and the stakeholders are sincere with their submissions, talking to their people at the grassroots and all of that. But just last month, the military confirmed that at least 3 army officers were killed by gunmen in Barakan Ladin local government area. And we've had places like Riyam, just south, recently just north. Have you been able to decipher what really makes these areas prone to violence?
Well, those challenges are there, and that is why one of the strategies is to separate the criminals who try to hide under tribe or religion or where they come from. And that has gone a strong way to be able to separate the issues, because most times the criminal elements hide behind their religion or behind their tribe. And so at a point when there's an accident, it is being interpreted that there's an attack. Just 3 weeks ago, a band of robbers were killed along the Rhine. And it was a gang of robbers that was comprised of a Fulani man and a Birom man. So you can imagine that if it was only one side, it will not be interpreted that, these people are being attacked or that attack. So first and foremost is to be able to clear the issues and separate the matter from criminality to the issues of the fact that people that are exploiting our fault lines, which are religion and ethnicity. And we're happy that even with the appointments being made by Governor Simon Lalong, which cuts across tribe, religion, the stress is really reduced. And the inclusive nature of the government is giving everybody a sense of belonging.
Has the Plateau State government been able to determine firsthand if this crisis is an internal problem, or the attackers are coming from outside into the state, perpetrate evil, and then leave?
Yeah, the attackers are actually coming from outside, most of the attackers, but there are also the other political actors that also take advantage of such to want to project their political ambition. Don't forget that these attacks also were in Benue, they were in Taraba. It's a wild wind that seems to go across the country.
Actually, there's a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to establish that first. So if the government has established that these attackers are coming into the state to do that, then how can you tell us that the Plateau Peace Agency is really working effectively, that the peace building program that has been put in place is going to really work to stop this crisis? Because since the government already understands that the attackers, the perpetrators, are not indigenes of the state or are not residents of Plateau State, meaning that whatever program you put in place, they could come in anytime, do whatever they want to do, and still leave without being arrested.
That is why we have a two-pronged approach. The dialogue is ongoing with the communities, and that, in fact, amazes us, because you're sitting with the leaders of both communities, discussing, they will finish discussion, they embrace each other. The next minute, there's an attack, which they are not even aware of. And that is where the role of the security agencies come in, because these attack groups appear to move across borders. And so the military is playing a key role. Right now, they've even acquired motorbikes to be able to go beyond where their vehicles cannot go. And that also helps, because they will also be able to crisscross borders. And that brings back the issue I've mentioned of criminality. That at the end of the day, when these bandits, when these wicked attackers attack, people begin to interpret, they like to flow into the narrative of tribe or religion.
Mr. Data, beyond the issue of armed banditry, because this issue has been on for a long time, there are some who would say that there are certain armed groups, there are citizens who have taken up arms. It was General Gundu who said one of the solutions to this is ensuring that every armed militia drops their weapon. What are you doing about proliferation of small arms? There are communities, there are armed boys, that the military says for one reason or the other have access to sophisticated weapon, perhaps in a way to defend themselves against this intrusion.
Well, what the issue of the arms it belongs to the military. They have their job clearly cut out for them. But what we are doing is ensuring that the youths have opportunities, that the youths have a future, and that is why, as I speak with you, more than about 2,000 youths have been engaged in entrepreneurial training with startup kits in collaboration with the ITF to be able to have a life of their own, to be able to have something to do. The state has also employed more than 4,000 teachers across the states. All that is to be able to engage those youths who, when being left alone, become vulnerable to some of these things that happen. And so we are working so much, especially also in the area of agriculture. Right now, Plateau has been chosen as the only state that will drive the potato value chain. And we have the ADB that is coming to support this project, which is going to mop up a lot of youths off the streets, because they will now be engaged in farming, they will be engaged in productive ventures, and all that is to ensure that even as we try to solve the economy, the security issues, we create a way for the economy to grow and boost. Because we see a correlation between youthful unemployment to being at youth being susceptible to some of this unhealthy behavior. So we are working as we bring peace. We are also bringing in the economy and empower people with skills and finances.
Okay, as many people already understand by now, like you said earlier, that it seems that this problem is in the North Central especially. So is there any form of partnership now among Plateau State and the other troubled states to be for them to be able to better man their borders? We understand that state governors, of course, do not have control over security anymore, but are there any form of relations among the states?
Yeah, because like the security agencies do not have boundaries across states. They can operate across boundaries. And that is why what we do is try to support their efforts. And that is why we'll be able to procure about more than 50 vehicles, which has been distributed to them. We'll be able to bring alive the communication center and the police headquarters, where our own local operation Rainbow is also being reactivated. All these are strategies being put in place to be able to empower the military and other security agencies who have constitutional power to operate across states, to be able to be more effective in their operations.
It's all right. Just before we let you go, your principal has blamed politicians severally for the lingering crisis. One would have thought that that would inspire a more transparent process when it comes to the conduct of election. But the just concluded local government polls seem to have stirred up another, uproar. What the opposition is saying, for instance, is that results were announced while collation was ongoing, that local government returning officers were still at various collation centers when the results were announced and just. How do you react to that?
Well, that is totally untrue. And the Plateau State Independent Electoral Commission, PLASEC, is an independent body, and they announced the results after the elections. Secondly, even long before the elections were conducted. And let me say, the elections were done peacefully. You have your correspondents all over the state. And long before the elections held, the Chief Judge of Plateau State also inaugurated the Elections Appeals Tribunal. Now, these are standard operating procedures when it comes to election, such that when people have grievances, they take it to such bodies.
Some will say that election is a process, Mr. Dati,
that has lost election, mobilized talks to the streets to create a semblance of disunity. It's not a civilized way of behavior. I just wanted to cite here
that election is a process. So if you say the election was peaceful, it will be that, the days before the election, during the election, and after the election, there was an uproar after the election. There was vandalization of properties, and so on. My question here is that what is being done? Because a general election is forthcoming next year to ensure that this is not repeated.
Well, the process means that, number one, do people have confidence in the election? Of course they did. The large turnout of voters showed that people had confidence in the process that was put on ground. Secondly, people came out to do the elections. Now, the few pockets of the opposition party mobilized few youths to the streets and wanted to create a semblance, of unrest simply because they have lost election. But in a civilized society, we live where there are laws that guide every conduct of human behavior. So if you feel disenchanted, it is only fair to take advantage of the process being provided for you to make appeal. And that is why even we are also calling on people, especially youths, to be wary of some disgruntled politicians that try to take advantage of them and pour them on the streets.
Because, sorry, we don't lose focus of what we're really discussing right now. That's the Plateau killings. What is the government doing for the IDPs that are increasing by the day in the state?
Well, we'll set up different committees for the resettlement of IDPs. We've also set up another committee to also look at the welfare of the IDPs. What we want to achieve at the end of the day is that these IDPs will be able to return back home. But until that is done, we are creating a most conducive atmosphere by providing food, what is needed, and also mobilizing NGOs to come to their aid. Most of those who have also left are not able to go back because they cannot go back in such atmosphere, and that is why we are also talking with the military and the other security forces to be able to make their home conducive for them to come back, because we don't want a situation where they will come back and there will be attacks. And that is why we are pleading with the federal government to fasten the process of the establishment of the mobile barracks there, because when the barracks are there, it means you have security 24 hours. We are also pushing to see how we can get this resettlement fund released so that we'll be able to reach out to them. But for now, we have the IDPs who are living very comfortably, but of course, if you are not at home, it's not the same, whatever is happening. So we are also wanting to use this opportunity to appeal to good-mannered Nigerians to also come and support the process of government.
It's good to know, Mr. Dati, that
thank you very much. We just have to end it. The director is talking.
Your governor is in the same party with the president, so collaborating with the federal government shouldn't be a problem.
Yakubu Dati, Commissioner for Information. Thank you very much. Commissioner for Information, Plateau State. Thank you for coming on the show.